In Port-au-Prince, people refer to the earthquake to the present day as 12, which is the date that it occurred, January 12, 2010. So this is a little bit from Jonas. Port-au-Prince, Haiti. 12 is the number of days that passed since the first of the year and the earth trembled, only half of which I was finally old enough to blow out my own candles. 12, divided in half, is the number of candles Mama put on my cake, short 5 wicks for my real age, because that was what she could borrow from the neighbor woman whose children had all left her years before and never came home. The number of cell phones they could have bought her by now. The number of eggs that sit in an open carton on Malou's stand at the market, which takes 48 steps to reach if you force through the crowd like a chicken looking for her babies, hoping not to be snatched up off the ground to be fried for someone's dinner at night. The number of eggs we wonder at with wide open eyes but can buy only 2 or 3 of at a time if there's money in the house that week, or if not, that we can only gaze at from a distance while Malou makes us scatter away so she can deal with real customers, the ones who come down in their cars and never even put a foot out to touch the dust, who look out onto the market stalls from their perches and squawk at their drivers to get this and that, inspecting the whole dozen of eggs before purchasing it, while Malou yells, "Pas maïzem, don't touch my eggs. Pas cassezem, don't break my eggs." Ou toucher ou acheter. You touch, you buy. Dola, pas comme. We all know they have houses in Miami and Montreal, those people. 12. The number of ears of corn the crazy man who thought he was a cob had eaten after he was cured, then choked, thinking, I know I'm not a cob, but what if the chickens don't know? Papa told me that joke. -2 is the number of friends from school I can count on my hands, the number of first cousins on my mother's side, the number of seconds I can hold my breath at the dinner table before Papa slaps me gently across the back of my head to get me to stop, and I burst into laughter. Mama says he worries after us like a woman, but like a man, he doesn't talk much, uses his hands instead. ×2, the number of seconds I can swim underwater before coming up for air, watching the little school of fish with yellow bellies dart between my body and the distant, pointy pokes of pinkish coral reef stuck below at the bottom of the ocean. So that's Jonas, who ends up having a crushed limb as a result of the earthquake, and I won't tell you what happens to him in case you were going to testify. She turned to the heavy presence settled next to the mattress, pawing at her, and said, I can't see you. Would you please stop? Can't you see I'm tired? There's nothing left for you here. Go back where you came from. Then her face rough against the fabric of a mattress, Olivier gone as well, no warmth, next to her. What had happened to Olivier? That she didn't know, but the tadpoles, yes, if she allowed herself to think about it, she knew. 2 had been left beneath the neighbor's house. They had meowed like kittens for her, for anyone, for hours until they stopped making a sound. Where was Olivier? Everything made her angry deep down, an anger she could not show. Her rage manifested itself in a refusal to conform to camp life. The lining up for rice delivery, for rice was meted out by the plastic cupful from fat white burlap-like bags emblazoned with the red, white, and blue of the American flag. Scrawny children who seemed to belong to no one moved through the sinew of legs with eyes trained to the ground, picking up fallen grains into the palms of their hands. The lining up for water when the big truck with a rounded back came trundling down the broken cement, spilling half of its contents along the way and more when it stopped to open the faucets installed at the back before anyone was ready to fill their ramshackle containers, ranging from small chipped china cups to emptied coffee cans to multicolored Tupperware, to at the beginning, the large translucent containers designed for hauling water from distant wells that some had had the foresight of toting with them rather than attempting to save photographs and whatever trinkets they'd held dear that meant nothing at all to anyone else on earth. The lining up to take a piss in the trenches dug out along the extremities of camp by men who spoke a language no one could understand, though some looked like them, dark of skin and gaunt, as if they came from a place where food was also scarce. The lining up, and now the pawing at night. Why had the ground opened up and swallowed them whole, only to leave her alone, walking the broken roads?
Powerful words.
Thank you.
Thank you for exploring this novel. And how would you describe the process of hearing these characters and putting them in the written word?
Yeah, it was a very long process because when the earthquake happened, I lost family, colleagues, friends. I knew a lot of people at the time on the ground who needed assistance. And so writing about the earthquake was the furthest thing from my mind. I really wasn't thinking about it. But I was tapped as a scholar, as a specialist on Haitian women and children, women's literature and children,
Yes.
to talk about best practices after the earthquake. What should people do, not do? So I was giving talks, for weeks after months, and those months turned into 3 years. And every time I gave a talk, I talk about this a little bit in acknowledgments, people would come up and commiserate if they had been to Haiti, if they were Haitian, who they had lost, what had happened to them. And at the time when I would hear those stories, I wouldn't really think much, except for the commiseration that we had, what we shared. But about 3 years into it, at the time I had another book come out with People Tree Press, which was called The Loneliness of Angels, which was on, I think, the 2004 hurricane season, so a completely different time, but some similarities in terms of devastation, atmospheric devastation and consequence in Haiti. And so I was a writer-in-residence at UWI in Trinidad, and a friend of mine, Raul Gibbons, who's a playwright there, introduced me to Leroy Clark, the painter, who's was the premier painter of Trinidad and Tobago. And he was working on a series on Haiti. So Raul said, you need to visit and see the paintings. And I was taken over there. And I saw at the time 76 of what was to become 111 work cycle. Paintings of different sizes, and they're all put out for me. And I'm walking through Leroy's space, and when I came to the space where he had been painting, and he hadn't come to greet me yet, I just started weeping. I could feel the energy there. And the first painting in the series, he actually started in 1986, after the fall of the Duvalier regime, and he never finished it. And then after the earthquake, he finished it. It's called The Mother. It's a huge painting. And then started painting feverishly, into the night, these other paintings that I saw some of. And he came, to me in the space, and he put his hands on my shoulders. At the time, he was in his 70s. And he said, tell me what they're saying. He had never been to Haiti. He had never been in contact with Haitian painters, and the paintings were very Haitian, is all I can say.
That's remarkable.
Yeah. And I started telling him what I thought they were saying, and we had a discussion about it. And I went home from that trip thinking, why was I telling the great Leroy Clark the meaning of his own paintings? Like, what was going on? And it was a very spiritual experience, and so maybe a week after I got home, I realized that I had been receiving, in the same way that he was receiving messages in the night and painting, the spiritual exchange with people he didn't know, spirits he didn't know, and was telling the truth of the devastation of the earthquake from a distance, as somebody who was just part of the diaspora, right, the connections we share. Then I realized that people had been coming to me, talking to me, because they knew that at some point I would, as a creative person, as an artist, tell the stories however best I could. And so I sat down and all the characters just came. not all by name, but who they were, what their occupations were, what their ages were. And so by that time I had also been very much steeped in the experience of a local experience and had my own experience as a diasporic. And so I knew that I wanted to spread in age. I wanted to talk about those who had passed on as well as those who remained. And I didn't read from Malu, but Malu is the market woman that's referred to, who opens and closes the novel. And I wanted her to have the opening and last word, because when people see Haiti, they often see market women as kind of emblems. And I think we see pictures of women all over the Caribbean, market women as a kind of tourist attraction. But they know so much about the culture, and the marketplace is a place where we all go to, whatever class whatever background we're from. And as a granddaughter, great-granddaughter of a market woman, I just wanted her to give her that noble place, to acknowledge that she does know so much more than we do about what the future of these countries, of Haiti, should be. So that was the transmission process, I think, that started off writing the characters.
I see. I can't imagine what it was like to, immediately be in the trenches, giving talks, which postpones being with your feelings. So when you said that at that point, engaging with this painter, the weeping began.
Absolutely.
And the characters came to you. Shall we talk about Malu?
Sure.
Let's talk about Malu as she begins and closes this novel. It was really interesting to hear her words about family, about preserving ancestral traditions. What would you share about that with all of us here today?
Yeah, so, I don't know if anybody here remembers what 2010 was like, in terms of if you heard about the earthquake and what you heard. But one of the things that happened, which was tragic, I think, from a Haitian point of view, is that a lot of white American evangelists denounced Haiti's or Haitians' relationship with voodoo, and claimed that this was a consequence of spirituality gone awry, so to speak. And so one of the things I tried to do in the novel is actually to redress that notion and give voodoo a central place in how people were able to experience this calamity and actually persist beyond it, And also in Haiti, we have a very strong belief that the dead are not dead. Our ancestors are with us. Those who pass away become like gods, and they help us wherever we are. And so Malu, interestingly, as she shares in the novel, is someone who was brought up Catholic. And there's I don't know for other islands, but there's a joke in Haiti that we are 80% Catholic and 100% voodoo. So and that doesn't mean that everybody practices voodoo, but it is an integral part of the culture, even if you don't practice it as your spirituality. And so what Malu expresses is how she, through her husband, and this is where she gets her nickname, Malu, so her husband's name was Lou, and when she was a young person, and her husband died when they were both fairly young, she had the habit of saying, well, my Lou says, and so people started calling her Ma Lou, Mother Lou, because she's always talking about her husband. And her husband was a voodooism and taught her about these aspects of the culture. So by the time the earthquake happens, she holds both in her mind, the Catholic system and the voodoo system. But what she says right away is, well, maybe we need to cast away, the Christian gods, and we need to, pray to the voodoo gods or the African gods, because she's not sure that this Christian heritage has gone Haiti very far. And that ties into then some discussion throughout the novel about the failure of aid work after the earthquake, both of missionary work and other work. So Malu is that person who voices that kind of coming around to thinking, oh well, maybe there is something to what my husband and other voodooisans believe. And it's also the ritual that takes her to Sodo at the end of the novel with the other women of the novel. Sodo is a waterfall, sacred site in Haiti that goes back to the revolution, where people pilgrimage every summer to be renewed, a kind of baptismal ritual.
As you mentioned, Sodo, it really is a good opportunity to highlight that throughout the novel, it's all about water.
Absolutely.
Water as an expression of life.
Yes.
And then a character also speaks of it as a curse after rainwater is then, contaminated.
Mm-hmm.
So life and death constantly being described throughout the novel. So Malou starts that.
Yeah.
She begins that. And then you mentioned the belief that we're not truly dead. We are going between worlds, if you will. And so as the novel opened with the epigraph about Legba,
Yes,
I would love to hear more about that and how it informs that story about life, death, water, bones, eggs, all of these things that speak of life and being in between worlds.
So I should have started by reading that invocation, so I'm glad you brought it up, and I'm also glad that as a reader you detected that flow of water through the entire novel, because one of my objectives was to make water a kind of 11th character, if you will, so I'm glad you saw that. But here's the invocation for those of you who don't have the book yet or haven't heard it. Atsibo Legba, ouvri pot la pou mwen, Papa Legba, ouvri pot la pou mwen, ouvri pot la pou mwen k'ab entre, pou mwen k'ab tourne. Atsibo Legba, open the door for me. Papa Legba, open the door for me. Open the door so that I can enter, so that I can return. So that invocation does open the novel and the reader then is initiated into Haitian culture in this way. And Legba is the god of the crossroads, so is very important to our culture. And so he needed to be there to open the novel for us. And if anybody actually has time to go to UCLA Fowler Museum, there's a beautiful exhibit of the works of Haitian muralist, drapeau maker, Yolande Constant, where she talks in a video about the importance for Haitian artists to always begin with Legba, with this kind of permission to open the door. And in that invocation, you also hear that you're opening the door so that Legba can return. And so it's also this idea that you want the material world to have a way to open into the spiritual world. And so the characters who will pass away in this novel have a way of returning, through this invocation. They have a way of being able to come back into the material world. But it also depends on whether those of us living are willing to open that door, or this is why we invoke Legba. Because he doesn't enter just, by his own volition. It's called Spirit of Haiti, was just about this very topic, which is the flow of drugs into Haiti after Noriega's capture. And it was very stark for Haitians, that movement of the drugs, because we never had a drug culture before this happened. And so there is so much to know about Haiti that I think people don't know. But one of the things I tried to capture in this novel, as you've just stated, are all the exchanges between different parts of the Caribbean, Caribbean diaspora, Africa, and that it all meets in some way in the basin, but in Haiti in particular. And in many ways, Haiti has been very isolated from other parts of the Caribbean, linguistically, economically, spiritually, in terms of what's there. But we're so connected, actually. And also, because you're bringing up the Trinidadian character, Leopold, who is a drug trafficker. That's how he makes a living. And that's where you hear about Panama, and you hear about Noriega.
They were making fun of the rum.
I apologize. Well, so Haitians, this is something to know about Haitians, is that if you ever go to a Haitian party, Barbancourt is the king. We make the best rum. That's what we believe. But I think this is every Caribbean island thinks they have the best rum.
Exactly.
But we really do. No, I'm just kidding. It is in the top 3, I think, in the world, I have to say. It is quite good.
It's Caribbean. That's all that
That's
matters.
all that matters. Okay. So we'll put our swords down on that one. But yeah, we're making fun of him because he's thinking that he'll get some good rum, and then I think the people he's talking to are saying, well, just wait until you get to Haiti because they're going to claim they have the best rum, which we do. So yeah, but there are all these exchanges, and what's been really wonderful hearing from readers actually of the novel is how surprised they were to find some detail connected to themselves.
Yes.
You know, that there is something. Jamaica is also mentioned, I believe, in terms of the market women and how they travel between the countries, and that's how Leopold figures out actually how to travel in this area as a drug trafficker, but it's through the market women. Right. And so, you know, there's a bit of Jamaica, there's a bit of Trinidad, and there's the French connection, which is colonial, of course. Right. And then there's Rwanda. And Rwanda, for me, came through because of a Haitian filmmaker, Howard Peck, who some people might know. He had a HBO special a couple of years ago about colonialism in general. But one of his first big breakthrough films was Sometimes in April, which shows on HBO, I think, every April, which is on Rwanda. And I was really intrigued with, you know, why would a Haitian filmmaker make a film about Rwanda? And I learned so much about his process, and I had an opportunity to go to Rwanda and talk to women in cooperatives and so forth. And the landscape and the people and what they went through because of the '94 genocide was so similar in terms of Haiti. It was strange for me to be there and feel like the sorrow of the land, the sorrow of the people, but also how the women were working together, you know, to rebuild their futures, and also went through a lot of trauma.
Like the women in the novel.
Exactly.
Coming together. It's interesting that the character you included who worked in Rwanda and is an architect, a builder.
That's right.
You know, in the midst of all of this destruction on so many levels, not just literally, but in other ways too, figuratively.
Yeah, I felt like I needed to comment on that because what people, you know, the only thing that people retain about the earthquake was that people were so poor that they couldn't build buildings to code, right? Or that codes are not maintained. And living in California at the time that I finished, you know, working on the novel, I came to find out that the codes that were used for rebuilding, you know, to actually assess the damage, were actually the California codes. It's an engineer from here who went back and started looking at that. But I also come from a family of engineers on my mother's side, 2 of whom had their entire career, well, one of whom had his entire career in Haiti, was trained in the SUNY systems, I think, and then went back to Haiti. And then another from an older generation who worked in Northern Africa, but then went back to Haiti and just stayed there, you know, and none of their buildings fell. And my cousin, who was one who was trained in New York, was actually the first person to take me on a tour of Haiti when I returned in 2011 and showed me all the codes. And at the time I didn't know about the California connection, but he showed me all the codes. And I've written about this in a different piece. You know, I'm trying to remember where it was published. I think it was in Guernica. But he told me, so the story with him is that he disappeared after the earthquake. Like no one in the family knew where he was. And then he would show up, well, people would see him in the morning, like dressed, very well dressed, descending into the city, and then coming back late. And nobody knew what he was doing. And apparently this went on for 3 months. And what I found out later when I went back myself is that he had actually been one of the first engineers to crawl into buildings and to assess them for viability. And he didn't tell anyone of the family because he didn't know if he was going to survive it, one, right, if something would collapse, and also just because of everything he was seeing. But I remember thinking, you know, this is somebody who really knows his country, knows what he was doing, and then assessed. And so that became part of why I wanted to write a character like Anne, who's an architect who wishes she could stay in her country, and ends up, by the time the earthquake has happened, is working already in Rwanda and then tries to come back, but actually can't withstand the pain of going through the camps and talking to people, but then imagines, the cathedral, because there was a competition. That actually is true. Of course, Anne didn't win, and actually no Haitian won, but there was actually a competition, international competition launched for rebuilding the Cathedral of Haiti. I think the winner was a Puerto Rican architect, I'm not sure, but it has yet to be rebuilt because the Vatican is not releasing funds for it.
It feels like Anne is a metaphor for assessing with heart, assessing from a place of getting to know what the community truly needs.
That's right.
As opposed to coming in with foreign eyes.
Yeah.
Foreign interpretations of what works.
And what's interesting about Anne is that she is of the people. I mean, her father did not raise her. He sent money for her to get to school, which is why she's able to get the education she gets. But and her mother was a school teacher, but they're poor, humble people. But that money enables her to, to change, class, but she hasn't changed her mentality. She hasn't changed.
It lives in her.
That's right. She hasn't become her father, in that sense.
Mm-hmm. So much, so much. One of the things that stands out to me, especially when you mention that you've received feedback from people who see themselves or can identify with certain experiences in the novel, going back to Panama, and particularly what you mentioned about what happened during the invasion to capture Noriega. I wondered about you, just like I wondered about Didier in Boston, being away from Haiti when the earthquake happened. I thought about what it feels like to be aware that disaster is happening in your country while you're far away.
Yeah.
I actually watched the invasion in real time. I had only been living here 3 years. Watch it on television. I was thinking of DDA in Boston, desperate to get information on CNN and NPR. I thought about you, being far from your country while this is happening. I'm curious about your process as it relates to that.
Well, I think when I heard what had happened, so what happened to me is that I received a message on my phone that I needed to look at the news. But I was living in the Midwest at the time, and I was walking into a seminar, to teach, and I couldn't. So I just said to whoever had sent the message, I'll look after my class. And I think my class was at 5, and the earthquake was at, I think 4:45, something like that. So between 4 and 5, I don't remember exactly. And 3 hours later, I emerged, and I was like, okay, well now I have to check what happened. And everything was dark, right? Like there's no images coming out of Haiti, but not very much. Call my parents who at the time were in Canada. My father's still there. And, it's a strange thing because for Haitians, I think the earthquake was like a cleaving moment. Like it was it was a literal break between everything that had gone before and everything that will come. But at the same time, there was something eerily familiar about it, in terms of if, I was born in the middle of the Duvalier regime, like when somebody would disappear or, be in jail or a coup happened, that moment where everything for you stands still and you have to make the calls. Except that this time, nothing was going through and nothing was coming back. And I remember at least spending 2 weeks in my apartment, like not really going not leaving, just there, trying to get information. And the complete, because as you say, like when you start making all the talks and all that, you're not grieving. But there was a moment before all that started, that process, where I was just in complete despair and disarray and unable to function,
Mhm.
you know. And there was a point before I started going on the road giving talks, where I lost my voice. You know, I literally couldn't speak. Part of it was that I was speaking to a lot of people, but then I just lost my voice and I had to regroup and get myself together.
The body knows everything.
Yeah, my body just shut down, you know. But it allowed me a space to really think about what I wanted to say, what I wanted to do, what I wanted to respond to. You know, with the novel, and then DJ was born out of that, you know.
Interestingly, this book was published the year of another earthquake.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so much to talk about. Let's invite our audience to share their thoughts, their questions. Thank you so much, Dr. Chancy.
You're very welcome.
What a pleasure to
Thank
have
you for
this experience.
conversation.
Any questions?
And to all of you.
Comments? Thank you for being here. Yes. Thank you for sharing with us the importance of investigating before we engage ourselves in any form of philanthropy that is misguided. It's so important so that, you know, healing can truly happen in a well-informed way. Yeah.
And also to know that there are many, many, many really, you know, wonderful communities and families who just want to live their lives in Port-au-Prince and in Haiti, and that's what we need to support.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
The arts come to our rescue all the time.
Yes.
I hope so.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
A round of applause for this panel, please. Melissa Shepherd-Williams, thank you so much for leading that. That was
Thank
just
you.
absolutely amazing. And Myriam Chancy, I don't know if you knew this, but